Okay, all set.
Thank you, Barb.
Maya back in here.
Yeah. Okay. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We can just get the meeting started. I call this meeting the Safety and Student Wellness Ad Hoc Committee meeting, dated February 2nd, 2023 to order. But yeah, I think we can start with our kind of check-in. We just want to check in with everyone. We can do roses or thorns or anything, but this year has been a lot already, so we just want to check in with everyone to see how everyone is doing. So, does anyone want to start us off? Okay, Megan, can you start us off?
Yeah, for sure. The second semester has for sure been a little chaotic, just kind of settling into a new rhythm. And we just started our course cards, so I've been like looking into classes for junior year, and it's very stressful trying to figure out like what works, what's not going to work, and eliminating things that just aren't going to be feasible. But overall, I mean, I think everything's going well. Mia, would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Second semester senior year is a little bit stressful, but also it's pretty chill. So I don't know, it's going overall pretty good. Cece, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Second semester for me is basically like the same as the first one, except I've switched out my only elective. So I'm just hanging out. Michael, do you want to go?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's sorry, this week's been a very, very draining week. So like I'm just kind of like very physically and emotionally exhausted, but for good reasons. Been visiting a lot of schools and seeing a lot of awesome things happening in classrooms and in hallways. So trying to keep it all balanced. Let's see here. Dr. Hicks, have you gone yet?
Good evening, everyone. My week has been also a lot overwhelming, but still fired up, ready to go and get the work done. So, whoop, whoop, whoop. Andre.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'd echo what a lot of people say. Very busy week. I had a short little vacation, which is always great, but also makes for more work when you get back. So it's been busy, but it was great to have an extra couple days off end of last week and the beginning of this. So I will pass it to Dr. Ramirez.
I'm going to echo what everybody else said. Very busy close. I think I mentioned last month, closing many cases and opening a number of new cases. So it's that overlap period. A lot of work. I'm going to pass it to Ruben.
Hey, everybody. Good to hear everybody's experiencing the same week. It's good to have that solidarity. And what else am I saying? Happy that the sunshine is out, though. So that's been a good break in that darkness for a while. And Mari.
I am just going to say that I am also happy that the days are longer, and I'm looking forward to lots of fresh starts in the new semester. And I will pass it to, how about Maya, please?
Yeah, I would say I am thankful for the sunshine recently, getting out behind those clouds. So I would say I'm still not a fan of snow, and the snowstorm. It wasn't even a snowstorm. It was just lots of snow. made my life very difficult, I should say, including getting my car stuck on ice. So I will pass it off to Lavinia.
Yeah, my week has been pretty busy as well, but it's been really fulfilling. So it's nice. It's one of those weeks where I don't mind when it's busy because it feels good at the end of the week. But yeah, Joanna, do you want to go?
Yeah, I can go. Sorry, I can't turn on my camera right now. That's why I have it off. But I would say something that was good is like the superintendent's event, seeing a lot of people who I usually see on Zoom only, like Mr. Jones was there. So that was pretty cool seeing people in person.
Yup, definitely. I think that is everyone. So we can move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the public input. Just so you guys know, we talked about this last meeting too, but people can submit like written statements and public appearances. We don't have those today, but we did have an additional comment that was sent through our webpage. And that's attached in board docs if you guys want to check it out. But yeah, if that's all for that, I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the approval of minutes. I move to approve the minutes from the meeting of the Safety and Student Wellness Ad Hoc Committee dated January 19th, 2023 as 2023.
Second.
It's so weird. That's written. Thank you. Wait, who was that? Oh, okay, Andre. Okay. Okay, cool. We can move on to the survey reports.
But we need to get the vote, please.
Oh my God, I always have one point. Sorry, guys. Okay. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Okay, motion passes. Nice. Okay, now we can move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the survey reports. There isn't anything new in the survey reports. It's just for reference. But one thing to know is that the 500-page of responses has been made public, so everybody can view that, you guys as well, in addition to the notes page. But yeah, those are there just for reference as we move on to our discussion for the final recommendations. So Maya, do you want to?
Yeah, I can take that. So as you all see in board docs, we have, and Barb also sent it over to you all earlier, just to review. Pretty much we got majority of folks to submit the recommendations to us. So we'll start with the panel structure. Barb, do we need to vote on the panel structure, or do we just take the consensus? Because I don't see.
That is a proposal, and the people that would actually vote on that would be the board.
Okay.
But if there are changes that this committee wants to make to that, we should do that now.
Okay, got it.
It has been updated since the last meeting, given the comments from there. But yeah, so we added the classroom teacher component. But yes, this committee would vote to move that idea forward as a recommendation to the board to create that panel.
Okay, so we do need a vote on it. Okay.
Yes.
Let's do that first before we get into the actual.
Share that if you want to look at it.
Yep. So right now, Barb, can you pull it up?
Yeah.
Thanks. So as Barb mentioned, we added the recommendation for the classroom teachers here. So right now, this is what the committee panel would look like, or not committee, let me not say committee. This is what the panel, the special panel would look like. superintendent and his designee, 1 person from the Board of Education, 3 parent reps, 1 from each level, a student rep, 8 of them, 1 from each high school, and then 2 middle school reps. Classroom teachers, 4 to 6, all 3 levels included. So 1, and then also 1 special ed teacher, and then an assistant, and then another, regular education teacher, and then 1 to 3 other classroom teachers. Community partners, 3 per year. And the terms would be the 2 years, and then 3 principals, 1 from each level, and then supporting staff, mental health and security, 2 folks from that area. I guess anybody have any questions about this or any kind of additions that we may want to make before I'd make a motion to submit this as a recommendation to the board?
I did have one slight request.
Okay.
Maya, first off, thank you thank you all 3 of you so much for making the adjustment and hearing us on adding more classroom staff to it. I was just wondering if it could be amended to say classroom teachers and educational assistants, just because in case we have an SEA, I think, especially when it comes to safety, as they work very directly with students as well, or students with disabilities. Oh, we already have that. I'm sorry. So that's already in the bullet point. You know what?
Thank you, Michael.
Sorry.
Okay, great. Okay, that's okay then. All right, thank you.
That's all right, Mike. I guess I was saying it, but didn't finish that sentence. So also my bad.
So again, can you just clarify for me? So can you scroll up just so I can see the charge again of okay. So this panel, not a committee or whatever, is supposed to take the recommendations that this committee is making and to try to ensure their implementation. Is that correct?
That's one aspect, yes. And you can also take up other items as they deem necessary. Yes. So the panel will be ongoing as opposed to a committee which has an ending point. So the panel will continue on, but it will start with the recommendations from this ad hoc.
That are approved by the board, yeah. And the recommendations that we submit for it. Looks like
okay, Rebecca, I'm seeing that you're hesitating. Is there something else that you want to say about that?
Well, I'm just what I'm curious about, or I'm wondering about, isn't that the job of the people who are paid 6 digits to make sure that these recommendations are implemented? If the board is approves the recommendations that we're putting forward?
Well, yes, they're definitely involved. And this stretches across many departments and areas. So there's not just one particular person or entity involved. It's also community facing, which it has not been in the past.
Okay.
So that you have community people on this. And they're going to play a very big role. And I think if I might, I would just suggest that probably has been one of the things that Freedom Inc. wanted us to do long ago. And so and other organizations, like you heard from Dana Pelabon in this committee, she wants to be, more involved on the inside. And that is what this will do. This will create that.
So it's oversight and implementation of the recommendations that come from this committee.
It's definitely yes. Okay. Do they have a So the way that the board works is that's a hierarchical structure. They're the people that can vote, and they direct the superintendent, who directs his staff. This is a panel of people who come to the superintendent directly. And yes, they can definitely ask questions, and they can get data, and they can ask about how things are doing as far as implementation and everything else. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rebecca, for asking those clarifying questions so that we make sure that everyone feels good about us possibly voting on this soon. Any other questions or any adjustments or additions that folks want to make before I try to craft this motion? Okay, so seeing none. Okay, let's go into the motion of this. So I move to recommend, or I'm trying to think of the best way.
I think that's a good start, Maya. I recommend that the board.
So
of
I move to
Education-
recommend.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Hicks, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I saw on I was trying to hit it off and then it came up. On the for the panel, it said from the 4 high schools, there are 6. And so just wondering.
Oh,
So
okay.
it
So it does say 8 student reps total. So 2 middle schools plus the 6 high schools.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So
All right.
they're counted in there, Angie. That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So I move that the Safety and Wellness Ad Hoc recommend to the Board of Education the MMSC internal safety and wellness panel structure as set forth in our board docs.
Yeah, in the document attached.
In the document attached to this meeting. So then I would just need a second.
A second.
Andre seconded, and all those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like we have unanimous vote. Thank you all. Okay, let's move on to the actual recommendations. So we sent them forward to you all. Hopefully everyone has gotten a chance to read the compiled recommendations. For those that are watching currently, they are in the board docs. There are 2 attachments, one's with a scoring card and then another without one. And we have broken them out into categories. So we have behavior, we have nutrition, building and facilities, general staffing, student mental health. Thank you, Barb. And then staff mental health and training. And then out of the box ideas, which were things that we weren't really sure where to fit them in, as they don't necessarily have its own category. And then that's it. Okay.
Just a suggestion, you can take them by category if you want, so that you can focus in one area. Um, and there were a couple of late additions that I want to point out that are not in these two documents as yet. If it is, if the committee is okay with it, I would like 10 minutes to be able to do that, because I do want them all in here. And then that may give you some time to read through the documents one more time. They are exactly the same, except one of them has a priority score column and the other one does not. But if you can give me a few minutes to update that, I would appreciate it. Or we can read to you what was submitted just before the meeting. It is at the committee's pleasure.
Yes, so how would you guys like to move on that? Barb can read those recommendations in this meeting, so they'll still be imprinted in the video. Or would you all prefer to kind of get it in a written form and her to update the board docs document? So I guess put a thumbs up if you want the first option. Okay, I see Mari and I see Ruben. Okay, and put a thumbs up if you would prefer the second option. Okay, so most of the voting members would prefer the second option. So I think we can, I don't know, Barb, do we recess in these meetings just for like
Yes,
5?
yes, it's not a formal motion, but yes, you are gonna state for the public that you are recessing for a few minutes and we'll reconvene.
Okay.
We will reconvene at 5. Let's see, it's 45. So, you know, about 5 to let's see. I'm sorry, I'm in a different time zone than you.
It's
So
5:41 right now. Do you
5 to
need
6, okay?
Okay.
So 10 minutes, all right? And then we will come back. So if you could, you can turn your videos off, but don't leave the meeting. And I'm going to leave it up on YouTube. And we'll just be recessed and yeah, shut your mics off. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'll be right back.
Yes, so Barb is going to add those to the document, and then you all should be able to access it. For those of you that have access to the recommendation with the scoring grid, if you want to kind of go through it yourself and kind of pick a couple that you think are important, that's great. And we will recess until 5:55 for us to update that. So thank you all, and thank you to public.
Thank you. We are recessed at 5:42.
Okay, the time is now 5:55. If committee members can come back to their screen. You can, if you refresh your board docs, it does look like there have been some adjustments. Okay, just waiting for Rebecca and Mari.
2 minutes.
Okay, Barb, thank you.
Remind me where how to do the refresh for the board docs, because I think I'm looking at an old one.
Yep, so you should be able, like in the agenda that you already have up, if you just click the item again, it kind of like refreshes itself. But it sounds like Barb is just waiting about 2 more minutes. She just needs another minute or so.
Okay, going into board docs now to switch out the 2 documents. So then to respond to the question about refreshing, I just go into my browser and I hit the little arrow that looks like it's going round and round to reload the page. And that should be all it takes. Okay, they're both in place. And you are already reconvened at 5:55, so you can just continue on.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay. So it does look like I do see the updated versions in board docs. Again, if you can either refresh your page or you can just click the item again, and it will refresh itself for that item. Okay. So I think the easiest way to do this, and I'm also open for any kind of recommendations if folks think that it might be an easier way to do it. I think it's easier to go through each category. I can read the recommendations, and we can look, have a discussion about what we think should be a priority 1, and then number 2, and then number 3, in that category. And then we can go through each of the categories that way. And then at the end, we can look at what is left as our recommendations in each part, and then kind of narrow it down that way. I think that this is probably going to be the most lengthiest of the parts of the work that we've done. But I'm also open to suggestions from the committee on best ways that you would like to approach it, if not this way. Okay, so it looks like we'll just do it my way for a little bit and we'll see how it goes. Okay, let's start with, I would say, nutrition, because nutrition it's not a large portion of it. So here we have a nutrition from folks that made recommendations. Continue the implementation of salad bars at all high schools and into the middle schools. Continue to offer reduced charged meals. And if the school is unable to provide free food to students who are in need over the weekends, then provide information as to where they may be able to access it. Number 2, improve nutrition standards for breakfast and lunches. Number 3, at the elementary school level, schools or school lunch program could provide healthy mid-morning snacks to be eaten in the classroom. This would be preferred over begging the same parents to donate snacks. At elementary school and middle school, students could get 10 to 15 more minutes in their lunch period. They need more time to digest. If possible, or number 4, if possible, ensure that students are being fed lunches that will have more macronutrients by hiring more lunch staff with a higher pay. Number 5, updating school lunch system to create a more affordable and nutritious school lunch. And 6, add more critically inclusive or culturally inclusive foods to create more options for students. Add more vegetarian option or foods that provide adequate nutrition. Additionally, partner with local farms to get fresh foods at least 3 times a week, adding a salad, nacho bar, or more innovative food options, making sure that students receive as much nutrition as possible to perform at a higher level during the school day, and then revise how schools and students view school food by involving students in the process and planning more. Have students provide ideas with what to choose and make the menu more widely accessible. By involving students in the process, they will be more engaged and more willing to eat school food. So those were the 6 recommendations that came from the committee, individual committee members. And so, yeah, let's open it up for discussion on, how folks are feeling about the recommendations and what folks would like to prioritize as 1, 2, and 3. Just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Okay, so I'll start. I think number 6 for me is one of the most important pieces. finding ways that we can, I mean, we live in Madison. And I think, you know, we have a lot of surrounding local food options. And then we also have a local farmers. So finding more ways to get foods from our local farms into our schools is always something that I hope to, you know, that we can do as a district to widely partner with the local farms and such, and organizations that are able to get that. But I also think it's also super important to ensure that the students are part of that process. I have 3 middle schoolers. And so, you know, the more that the youth that are eating the food are involved in that, the more I think they want to eat it. At least I know I would. So, Ruben?
Yeah, I think it was number 1, where it said to expand that existing program. That seems like something that would be achievably tried out in the high schools. It seems like it's already in the middle schools. I don't know which ones, if not all, but seemed like I don't want to say easy first step, but something that we already know how to do, and so might be easy to expand.
Yeah, thank you. Mia?
Yeah, I personally agree with what you guys are saying. I like number 1 and number 6. And I also think that number 3 is a good one too as well, because I remember when I was in elementary school, our parents had to bring in snacks for us, and they weren't always like the healthiest things. So I feel like if we can like also work with local farmers to provide like more local and nutritious snacks like fruits and veggies, that would be amazing. So I think those are the 3 that I prioritize personally. But
Yeah, thank you. Joanna?
Yeah, same here. I also agree with the ones that were just mentioned. I think those are my top 3 as well, especially like the cultural and then like healthy snacks as well, because as you said, Maya, like I'd definitely be more like inclined to eat it if it was like cultural, you know, because it's really interesting. And then also like the healthy snacks, like how Mia was saying that it in elementary school they weren't really healthy at all, so that'd be good to focus on.
Yeah, thank you.
I also want to add that I agree with the cultural food. I've spoken to many students about school foods at my school, and a lot of them kind of mentioned how they hoped to see their culture represented in school foods, and also have the opportunity for other people to also try it. And I know that currently are very limited and malnutrition options for school food, which lead to a lot of people kind of just skipping out on lunch for the day, which obviously leads to kind of like impacts their what's the word I'm looking for? Impacts how they are at school. I'm forgetting the word, but yeah, I agree with the cultural food, and I feel like if we make it more inclusive and I guess engaging for the students, people will be more involved with and aware of what the options are and more willing to try to eat the food. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lavinia. Any other I guess any other folks that haven't spoken yet that want to kind of mention like where they're at on the category of nutrition? Dr. Hicks?
So the 3 that were talked about, I mean, I agree with them, but I also think about my brain is like in this space of implementation and what that means and cost and all that stuff and USDA and while the elementary one, there was previously, you know, some different organizations they would bring in, or in our district, they would bring in different kinds of vegetables and things for to try. So I think about all of those things, sustainability, cost. Salad bars were in the middle schools too. I'm thinking about cleanliness. I'm also thinking about time. We talk about add more time. Where are we taking something away? So it's not just as easy as saying, oh, well, let's do this, but what are the impacts and what are the things that are going to be needed in order for those things to happen other than just saying, let's do those things. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hicks. As a board member, obviously, those are things I always have to think about as we're working with administration. I do think, though, there's ways in which we have historically worked with our community partners that I think when it comes to funding and ensuring that some of these happen, I think we would definitely have to seek a greater investment from our community partners, whether that is, you know, organizations that we already currently partner with, like REAP, and have, like, you know, working with them. And then, you know, right now with Badger Rock, well, right now, not at current time because of their garden isn't at use, but some of the schools that are doing more agricultural focused curriculum at their school. I think, you know, and maybe that also is some elementary schools I've been to, they actually have like a community garden part. So how are we ensuring that that is also somehow programming that might be able to bring into schools? So I agree with you. I think it is it's deeper than this is what we're requesting. Obviously, there's parts of how we need to implement that, but I think that then is the charge of the administration and the board then to ensure that we have the budget, but then also that we can work through the recommendation and put, I guess, pen to paper of how we can actually do that. So, but thank you, Dr. Hicks, for stating that. Any other comments or recommendations? Dr. Hicks, I still see, oh, okay. Put your hand down. Okay. So right now we have on the floor, number 1, number 3, and then number 6. I think we can vote on them, or we can do just a consensus, but I would prefer to kind of vote and see how folks want to, if they are thinking these are the 3 that we would like to put forth to review, to make sure that we pick which ones we're going to use. I think we can vote. Barb, I don't need to do a motion for that. I can just do a consensus vote.
I think at this point we're asking for the committee to vote.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but it can be as simple as, you know, you vote to advance items 6, 1, and 3 under the nutrition category.
Okay. Okie dokie. Okay. Let me pose any other discussion. First, I want to make sure.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm fine with that. I think that's fine. I think if in an ideal world, if I was like parsing these apart, for number 1, for example, I like the expansion of the program. I don't know how we, back to Dr. Hicks's point, how we pay for the weekend meals, how we coordinate that. So like, I think I'm fine with just recommending the whole thing that people put in there because, you know, it's the full idea. But I completely understand that then it goes to the board who might figure out maybe part of this is possible, part of it's not. And then we move towards the goal of eventually achieving the whole intent of the list. If that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense, Ruben. It does. Thank you.
There's also the possibility of piloting certain things at a few schools at a time. So yes, if we can't do the whole thing at one time, there are certainly ways to start it.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, so I move to recommend. I move to recommend in 6.1 category nutrition 1, 3, and 6 as the recommendations to the board for implementation. I think that would work.
Wait, Andre, do you have a question?
Yeah, so my quick question on that is, and maybe it doesn't really matter, but looking at the scoring one, is that moving that forward for the first one of yes, these 3 make it, and then coming back and saying, now of these 3, which ones do we prioritize 1, 2, and 3? Or you know
Yeah.
what you know what I'm
No,
saying?
I get what you mean. Yeah. I think we wanted to get like 1, 2, and 3, like the top 3, and then go into prioritizing them. But I think, Barb,
you have all the options under the
Yeah.
sun. You can advance this entire document to the board. You can
To make it easy.
advance the 3 items that you have there just as they are. Because everybody can see them. They've been shared with the public. They're all there for everyone to see. As far as prioritizing them in order of what should start first, second, and third, I think it will be kind of hard to pull that apart with some of these because they're interrelated. So that is my opinion. If you feel like you want to prioritize them, you can at the end, probably. But you have several categories to go through here yet. And so you may want to prioritize some things at the end, I'm not sure. But in any case, especially in nutrition, I would say that these 3 items are very, very interrelated. So it will be tough to rank them 1, 2, and 3.
Yes. So, I mean, what we can do is maybe before we make the motion for this specific one, I agree, maybe prioritizing them might be a little harder for each of the categories. Maybe instead of prioritizing each item of the category, maybe prioritizing the category in itself of what we think needs to be done right away. I think that that's a way to do it. Otherwise, we can just do 1, 2, and 3 in each category, and then submit 1, 2, and 3 to the board. That way, we're not necessarily prioritizing any which one, but we're saying these are the things that we want to ensure happen.
Yeah, and I think I'm fine with either. I was just trying to get clarification looking at the scoring sheet. I think probably from my perspective, if you getting the 3, and then if it's come back around, either all 3 go forward and there's not any being a part of when these come out and being a part of implementation within the county. Just because something from the group comes as their number 1, there may be lower hanging fruit, kind of as Ruben was saying, that might be one of the first things you start on, or you need to start with this one in order to achieve the other. So I would be fine with just identifying the 3, not necessarily prioritizing or doing the prioritization at the end if we feel that's necessary.
Thank you for that input, Andre. How else are folks feeling about it? Okay, so that part of the ladder, and I'm okay with that as well. Lavinia, what do you think?
No, yeah. I think our priority should be getting through all the categories and finding our top 3. And if we feel the need at the end, we can kind of obviously come back to review. But I think it would be hard to kind of prioritize various topics or different topics when they're all like pretty important. But we can decide that once we go through all the categories and see what the rest of the committee thinks.
Okay, so I'll retract my motion because I think we can just do one motion at the end. It might be a lengthier motion, but I think we can probably just do one. Barb, would you prefer me to do a motion at each category or one long one at the end?
I'm sorry, one for each category. Sorry.
Barb's like, don't make my life harder. Okay. Did my motion previously make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're advancing items 1, 3, and 6 under the category of nutrition.
Okay.
To the board.
Okay. So Barb just recited my motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Andre. Okay, and then for voting members, all those in favor, please say aye. Or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay.
For purposes of voting, definitely makes a big difference to have you on screen. So please have your camera on if that is possible for you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I know Joanna is unable to. Cece, are you able to turn back on your camera?
No, I'm not able to currently, but I think I will be soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So yes, we have, I think, Ruben, you raised your hand, yeah?
That was just a second.
Okay. Okay. Did you raise your hand for voting? I just want to make sure I capture your vote.
Oh yeah. I said it out loud. Sorry.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So motion passes unanimously.
Great.
Thank
If
you.
it is okay with the committee, I would prefer to share the document that just has the category and the recommendations without the scoring column because it's a little bit easier to read and scroll through. Does anyone have any objection to that? Okay,
Good,
thank
Barb.
you. I will do that.
Okay. We'll go to building facilities.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully, number one, hopefully most of those problems will get resolved as the construction slowly comes to a close, but maybe increasing posters about vaping and its dangers or providing more information about how to quit. Number two, buildings and ground staff and or administration could come up with a restroom maintenance checklist consistent across all MMSD schools. Buildings and ground staff inspect all school restrooms on a quarterly basis using said checklist. Failed maintenance issues from checklists brought to school board and included in budget planning. With renovations happening, make sure that new heating and cooling systems are added into the renovation plans. Cell phone plan made so everyone can agree on phone usage in school and how they can be used or limited. Reducing vaping, smoking by creating consequences for this, and better improved and updated staff training. So those were the 4 that came through. So open for discussion.
This is Ruben.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that all of these are true. I was looking at the cell phone usage one. Is it true that we don't have a consistent policy for cell phone usage?
We do have a board policy.
Okay.
The issue with the board policy is that it is outdated. And individual schools do have a more building kind of implementation of what that looks like for their building of the cell phone policy. So some of our policies that the board make. We don't necessarily make the implementation part of it, and how, you know, it's as long as it's within the board policy, that's kind of what we do. But yes, it is different across some of the schools.
Okay.
Of how that's implemented. But we are working on it, and Student Senate has been very much involved in looking to update that policy.
Yeah, and I guess just generally for all of the recommendations we get, it would be helpful to know if, you know, do we have a quitting vaping program that we just need to spread to more schools or make more visible to people, or is the recommendation that because they said we don't seem to have it, you know, how do we implement that? So that was just my thought.
Thank you, Ruben. Rebecca, I saw you're unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to say? Okay, sorry. Dr. Hicks?
I'm not sure if I heard Ruben clearly. Did you say is there already instruction or learning or whatever around that in schools or not? I didn't hear you all the way.
Yeah, so I think you all would know better for some of the examples or the suggestions we got, if they already a program like this exists, or is the recommendation to create it from scratch. And so that's the helpful from the board members, from people who work in the schools, to just clarify that before we go through it.
So I would say yes, but I would say the level of consistency across all spaces is the question. Like, because it happens, people do it, but is it consistent across all buildings? Are all buildings doing it? Is that the requirement? You know, so those are the pieces that would need to be consistent. So this education and learn that happens in some spaces more than others. So just getting some consistency around those things would be.
Thank you.
Joanna?
Yeah, I think it was 2 and 3, the ones that were talking about like the bathrooms and the heating and cooling systems. Like at La Folla, we got new bathrooms and they're already kind of destroyed. Like some of the doors won't shut completely. So that's, I don't know, it seems like kind of important, you know. And then also like the heating and cooling system. This year it was like 49 degrees in our classrooms for like 2 days, and it was like impossible to pay attention inside of class. When it was like 90 degrees in May last year, when we were so forced to go to school, it was like I felt like 100 with humidity, and there's no proper air conditioning inside of La Folla. I don't know if any of you guys have been inside of there, but like there's really no air conditioning, and it makes it really hard for students to like actually pay attention or stay focused or even want to stay inside of the classroom. So I feel like that's something that's important to look at, but I don't really know how the implementation, how the money would go with that, with like how like little our budget is that we receive. So yeah.
I do know what some of the renovations that have been happening through the referendum. I know that there are portions of like heating and cooling that are being worked on and updated. The question is, you know, while the renovations are happening, how that is working out is kind of the question. But thank you, Anna, for that. Mike?
Yeah, I would just add on top of what Joanna was saying is that I've been to elementary and middle schools where the similar concerns and that's it's not a lack of effort or leadership or what have you. It's just we have a lot of older buildings. The high schools aren't the only old buildings in the district. I was in one this couple days ago where it was 50 degrees at 7:30 in the morning. So, you know, it is what it is. So I think having a consistent policy that I think is transparent, because if some people know it and some people don't, then that speaks to a communication issue. But I do agree that that points 2 and 3 should go forward.
Like you said, 1, 2, and 3.
I said 2 and 3.
Okay.
I'm split on 1 and 4 personally, but I'm just here to hear everyone else.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Dr. Hicks?
I was just coming back to the number 3. I'm not sure of all of the pieces of the renovations, and following up with what Mike said. The buildings are old, and even in some of the newer buildings, which I was in one, Wright does have air, but there are still, just problems that occur. And so while we try to update things do happen, and people have to come out, and we have to wait. So it's not, even when it's new, there still might be problems. So I want people to understand that new doesn't mean things aren't still going to happen. So I just want to make sure people are, cognizant of that and thinking of that.
Thank you, Dr. Hicks. I went to Randall and back when, and then I went to Wright back when. Going from no air to actually air was amazing, but that's neither here nor there. Any other discussion?
I do have a question, because number 3 is kind of, I'm assuming this person probably is going to talk about like after renovations as well, but it says like with renovations happening. And I'm wondering if this is like a long-term thing that we can still is it long-term enough to propose to the Board of Education? And is this something that, construction is aiming to already fix, but just like hasn't gotten around to it because there's like so much other construction going on as well, and it's hard to do everything all at once. So I'm basically just wondering if this is long-term enough to suggest to the Board of Education, and if there's already kind of steps set in place that are eventually going to happen that maybe the public isn't fully aware of yet.
Yeah, so thank you, Lavinia, for that. I know that we talk a lot about updating our schools as much as possible. And that would be a question for Cedric Cotto, who is in charge of our facilities. I think what we might be able to do is, if we wanted to make something like this more long-term, we can definitely propose just a change of language instead of like with the renovations, just ensuring that heating and cooling systems are like updated and or like newer or something like that. That way it's not necessarily just, only with the renovations that are happening, but that it might just, as a check and balance from us to the administration. I do see Mike's hand, and then Dr. Hicks.
Yes, and maybe I think Dr. Hicks could also speak on this much better than me, but to the best of my knowledge, Cedric Cotto and like building services do have like a checklist, and they visit and check on schools and make sure things are up to par, and if they're not, do work orders. I know sometimes things fall through the cracks because we got a lot of buildings and a lot of needs and supply chain issues and whatnot. I think what I was thinking was with if the recommendations go through and the committee makeup or this safety group goes through, then this could be like a bullet point or something that they could return to, and it's a discussion point for a community group kind of outside of just the board, right? Or just the board and administration. So I think there is merit in having it, even if there's not like a definitive timeline right away, because I think it's something we'll have to always go go in and look at it. And as soon as you renovate one building, another building's going to have needs too. So I think it's always good to kind of keep an eye on it. And I think it's really good for our community partners and our students and our families to be aware of that, because that is a very, very significant cost to a school district. And that's nothing new. That's not like a new thing from the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. And thank you for adding that in. But yeah, Dr. Hicks.
And yes, we do, there are requirements and around those things. And so just again, just the communication and then the follow through around just need to be more clear to be individuals. And then also when you were talking about that one, number 4, what was it 4? No, number 3, Maya, when you were talking about changing that, because there are like building plans that go over years, like to update. And I know it used to be that way, but that can also be a part of the update. It's over so many years down the road. I mean, so thinking about costs and all of those things and whether money's available or not to be able to do that, and creating a timeline, time frame, anticipation, all of those things for that. And I would just like to say to all the younger people that are on here, you are some different kind of people, because we didn't have air, we didn't have nothing, and it was still hot, and we still had to go to school, and we complained and they didn't do nothing. So I'm just being funny, but it's the truth.
I was there with you, Angie.
My fellow Madisonians. Rebecca, I saw that you unmuted, and I don't know if you wanted to comment or kind of, okay. So right now what I'm hearing is number 2 and number 3, and it's totally fine if we don't have a third one, as kind of like the areas of folks are focusing on. Ruben?
Yeah, I was going to ask this question mostly, I guess, of the young people on the call who are still in school. I mean, I'm interested in number 4 as well, just because I have a theory that, I mean, talking about safety in schools, that things can bubble up through phones and make things more contentious that might have gone unnoticed if people didn't have access to their phones all the time. And so do we even think that that's a realistic recommendation? Would it, I mean, because if we have a policy already, but it's hard to implement, I don't want to put that forward and say, you know, just do something differently. But I was interested in number 4 as well.
Yeah, so we are our policy team on our board is has been reviewing the cell phone policy. We've had long meetings about that. Our student senate, which Lavinia and Joanna chair that, they got like some great feedback. We collected the implementation plans of the cell phone policy at each of the schools. So, I mean, there's been extensive work around that. And our policy team is working on that. I don't believe we voted yet for the cell phone policy. And that's something I'll make a note to make sure that we bring back up in our board meeting. But definitely if we want to put number 4 forward, just knowing that it's a cell phone, that the reducing the vaping and smoking and better improved and updated staff training around these things is also part of that. I mean, that's totally fine. We can put that as move forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, or thank you. I appreciate that background too on the other policy. I mean, even if it's just that whatever happens with the cell phone policy has aspects of whatever safety suggestions or improvements can happen through that policy, maybe that's the best way to do it instead of pushing from this end if you're already doing one. But I'm fine with looping in the whole thing. It doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just want to ask, Mia, Joanna, and Cece what you guys think about that, because I know Ruben said towards like the children is, I mean, students, to see what you guys think. But
Yeah,
it's-
can I add on to that a little bit? So I think that right now in my high school, at least, there are certain teachers that have like certain cell phone policies, but to my knowledge, I didn't know there was like a school-wide policy. So I guess if we could like make that more apparent to students, I feel like that'd be better. If we could like implement that some way within the district, like every school, or even just like a district-wide, you know, cell phone policy. That would be amazing. But yeah.
Is it fine if I go? Or... Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah, just add on what she was saying too. It's like, because I did a lot of extensive research onto this. Like I surveyed students about this and I talked about it at different panels and like school board policies stuff. And it is really interesting to see how different high schools have different policies or don't have policies. So it's something that I am really interested in. I just don't know how it'd work out with the recommendation.
yeah, and thinking about how it plays into our vision of safety and wellness. Yeah. Cece, do you have anything else to add that you want to share?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with all three of you, but I also know that implementing cell phone plans will probably be more difficult than other plans implemented because of how attached students are to their phones and how sometimes phones are used as resources in classrooms. But also, there is an issue with like spreading news on cell phones and just students being on their phones constantly in class. So I do think that if we choose to go forward with this plan, it has to be very specific and very known to students throughout the district that there is consequences and there is a cell phone plan set in place.
Yep. Thank you for that. Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to, as someone who's been on the other side where I've had to take a student's cell phone away and then have said student and their parent threaten to harm me. And I'm using harm as a very light verb there. I would just say one of the complicating factors is even with a universal cell phone policy is enforcement is difficult because it's a lot of power struggles. And then that really impacts relationships between students, between classroom staff, between building staff, and whether or not we even have capacity to do something like that. Like if I had to go and when I was dean at West, have to confiscate every single cell phone at West where it became a problem. I wouldn't have been able to hit every single classroom. There wouldn't have been enough deans. I'll just be blunt. So I think that's one of the reasons you see staff having differing policies of whether or not they have the appetite to get into the power struggle over phones. And it is also like a huge liability issue because if a cell phone is damaged or destroyed or stolen in your possession, then. So I think this would be, I would be all for advancing number 4, as long as the panel, the subsequent panel is also looking at this and revising this, and we're constantly kind of having this conversation as opposed to kind of trying to have a one size fits all communicated policy, because that still doesn't take into account individual relationships and nuances that each school or each building has.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that perspective, Mike. Dr. Hicks.
I was just gonna add on to what Mike had said regarding it. In my opinion, it really is not that difficult to address like expectations and build community within school environments. Culture and climate is what drives so much in our schools. And I think when we look at schools as communities and all members being a part of the community and all members being also a part of building those expectations and supporting each other's through those expectations, and reminding others about those expectations. I mean, we talk about restorative justice, and those indigenous practices, but we talk about those things in silos and not bringing people together to build, bridge, affirm, and grow. And so in my opinion, it's not hard. It's more about what's the purpose behind that? What's the need, and how we're going to help to get the need met. So there are ways to address that. And I'm not saying that I agree or don't agree, but what I do know that, and I forgot who said it about people being was that Mia talking about the phones being attached to people. Young people's brains are being developing very differently because of that. So while technology is a great thing and it has enhances us, it has also created a great deal of issues for young people who will be adults. And so just thinking about what do we want, what do we need, and how will we get there? So that's just all I wanted to say about that.
Thank you, Dr. Hicks. So from our discussion, what I'm hearing is that number 2, 3, and 4 to move forward as recommendations of category building and facilities to the board with, the thought that the panel would be, monitoring how this implementation is happening based off the recommendations. Any other discussion on these, or someone wants to speak up for a different one before I try to craft this motion for this one? Okay. So it looks like none. Okay. So I move to recommend 2, 3, and 4 recommendations of the building and facilities category of the Safety and Wellness Committee mentioned in 6.2 of our board docs. Barb, is that sufficient?
Yes, I know that 2, 3, and 4 will be advanced from the buildings and facilities category to the board. I did hear a little bit about making sure that the panel monitors the implementation of the cell phone policy in particular.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to add that to that? Or would that just be implied? Because I think that's implied from the charge of the panel.
Yes, it can be. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Andre, is that a second or a question?
Just a quick question or clarification. So in 4, there's 3 different parts. Is this all 3 parts being forwarded? Because we didn't really speak to the other 2 very much, and I'm unclear what the better, improved, updated staff training is. Is that related to the cell phone plan or related to the vaping and creating consequences? It seemed like we focused on the first bullet point of 4 and not the other 2. Is there the possibility to pull just that first bullet out for the motion? Or I guess probably need to have some more discussion on 4 if we're including all 3 bullet points.
Okay, so I'll retract my motion just for now because it sounds like there might be a little more discussion that folks would like to have or clarification.
So to answer the question about whether you can pick and choose, yes. So if you just want bullet number 1 from number 4 to advance, you can do that. And then if there are questions about the rest of what's in there, there's a person on this committee who made this recommendation. If they could speak to that, that would be helpful also.
Yeah, I also just wanted to add that they're not necessarily together, but rather 3 different kind of recommendations just under the same topic. So, but yeah. If we want, oh yeah, Ruben, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna just say my intent in moving forward was to get the first bullet point. And I didn't know if we wanted to start line editing them, so that's why I didn't separate it out, but I agree that I don't know anything about the second or third bullet point on that, so if that person wants to clarify, maybe they are, since that goes into the cell phone plan policy.
Let me just clarify, Barb, we still have quorum, correct? I think someone, maybe Cece had to leave out. I think we do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess from my perspective, I would be fine carrying that motion forward with the friendly amendment of only part 1 of that, the cell phone portion of number 4.
I don't know if that needs to be second, but I would agree with Andre.
Okay.
Just because nobody commented, the board member who wrote that hasn't commented on the bullet 2 and 3, so we don't know what that all means, but it sounds like we have a little bit more agreement on the first bullet.
Okay.
Yes, then you can go ahead and vote on the amendment. And then you go back to the full motion.
So I retracted my motion so that we could have the discussion.
Withdrew it? Okay,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
withdrew it. So I'll just remake the motion then based off of what
Okay.
I moved to advance to the board 2, 3, and bullet point 1 of 4 of the building and facilities category in 6.1 as attached to board docs. Is that good, Barb?
Yes, thank you.
I'm getting better, guys. Okay. Can I get a second? Thanks, Andre. And then all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, it looks like that was unanimous. 1, 2, 3. Yep. I think it's 10-0. Great, thank you guys.
You can ask for nays if you want to, and people can say that, or they can use their hands for that.
Yeah.
I don't think you had any nays.
Nope, no nays. We got 10-0.
Okay,
Full
thank you.
unanimous. Thank you. Let's go into the next one, staffing. I'm just going to the categories that don't have a lot of recommendations, so we can get done with those ones.
Wait, really quick. I just want to ask the rest of the committee. I know we're like 10 minutes over time. Is it okay with everyone if we continue to address the smaller categories?
Can we, like, do we have an endpoint? I guess would be my other question, or is our whole, I mean, we're moving pretty slow. We have 8 categories here. I think we've got through 2. So is there an endpoint, or do we just, are we saying this is our last meeting and we're going to flush this out?
I mean, it's really at the liberty of the committee. So if folks want to plow through this and get done, I guess we can definitely go faster. Or if we want to, I can save face of not like saying the recommendations. That way we can just go into discussion right away. I was just doing that for just accessibility reasons, but Yeah, I mean, it's up to what the committee, if we want to get done, this technically was the last meeting. We can request to put another meeting on the docket, but then that just depends on how folks are feeling, if they want to or just want to be done. Get this to the board so that we can move forward. It's up to what folks are feeling. So totally open for how folks want to move forward. Thank you, Lavinia, for pointing that out.
Yeah, I'm fine to stay on and try to get rid of a few more of the short lists. But I also would be appreciative if we could find the time to do another meeting. And I think if that's the only thing on the agenda, because I think we started this towards the end of the meeting. So I could see us, if we did one more or two more and then only having 6 left, getting through that in the hour and 45 minutes that we usually get for a meeting.
I agree with what Ruben was saying, of maybe go through this next one that's a shorter one, and then, schedule another meeting with that as the sole topic and kind of plow through those at that point. People also would have maybe some more time to review and have come in with pieces, and maybe that'll move through quicker as well.
Okay. Mari?
Yeah, I agree with Ruben about having another meeting, but I also should point out I'm not a voting member, so but I just don't see us getting through all of these tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Mari. Mia?
Thank you.
I also agree because I do believe that we should spend enough amount of time going through everything, and I feel like doing this all in one sitting would be we'd be here until 8 or 9 p.m. And I don't know about any of you, but I have a lot of stuff to do today too. So I'd like to split it into another meeting or another meeting after that if possible.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is folks would like to do 1 or 2 more categories, get those finished, and then come back possibly next Thursday as the final meeting to flesh out the last. Okay. I'm okay with that too. Lavinia, how are you feeling? Sounds like we have the consensus from the group of voting members. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think if we just, depending on what the committee wants to do, possibly just go through our remaining kind of topics between now or whatever we get done now and next Thursday, to kind of just highlight the 3 that each of you think is important and want to push forward to the board. I think our conversations will be quicker and more efficient next meeting, so we can get through those longer topics.
Yep. So right now what I'm seeing here is we have behavior left, which is pretty lengthy. That has 9 recommendations. We did nutrition, we did building and facilities, general staffing, which is pretty short. We have 5 smaller recommendations. And then student mental health, which is 1 through 10 recommendations. So that's another large one. Staff mental health, which is 3 recommendations itself. And then we have training, which then has 11 recommendations, and then the out-of-box ideas. So maybe we can go through for the remaining general staffing and staff mental health, since those do have some of the, no, Dr. Hicks, go ahead.
Staff mental health had more than 3. I think that if you kept going down.
Oh, it did. Sorry. It does. It has 6.
We could look into out-of-box ideas instead of staff mental health.
I mean, I would want to,
The only
yeah.
problem with the out-of-box ideas is there's just what is this? I didn't even know I don't even think I made any comments on the out of box ideas. I don't want to be dismissive of that, but
yeah, I mean, I think what we can do is then the general staffing, and if we want to go through one of the big ones, or we want to save all 3 big ones for the next meeting.
I would propose just one more, just as we're, over, and I know I've been in meetings since 7 this morning. The body, we need to take care of all those things at some point.
yeah, I haven't eaten supper yet. I'd like to get some supper in me. Yeah, I agree, Andre. I would like to, let's just finish this last one. Give us some time to really review the big meaty ones and be ready to get some work done on the next meeting.
Okay. Do we want to go over out of the box ideas though, and give ourselves 30 minutes and be done by 7:30 for those 2, or just want to do that one?
I think what I'm hearing is general staffing.
Okay. Okay. Mari, your hand is still up. I don't know if you meant to put it down or not. Okay, let's go into general staffing and let's get that done. I'm not going to read them because it sounds like that's what's taking also a longer time. But I will just open up to discussion for general staffing for the items 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5.
So I guess we always keep going back and forth between how much we can afford and the viability of the recommendation. I know getting volunteers is a really hard thing to do generally right now in Madison, and so I think the school has probably looked into that before. Maybe that's not true, but if it's not worked, I'd want to put something forward that we can actually have a plan for.
Okay. So that's number 2, Ruben, correct?
Yeah.
Or which one are you referring to? Just or general?
Yeah, number 2.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
In points to number 1 and 2, I think we need to look at the language in terms of we do have people who are applying to be volunteers or offer these sort of support, but the problem is they're not really getting any feedback from human resources when they're applying for it, or they are encountering lots of hurdles in order to get through the kind of laborious process of getting through everything. So I don't know if it's a matter of getting more people, but the amount of people that are applying, getting them through the system, and whether that's working with HR to try to expedite that process, or having discussions or pushing on that process to speed that up. I think because that's been a problem for more over a year, where I was at a school 2 days ago talking to an EA. Her friend applied to be a volunteer and help out for lunch duty, applied in the fall to volunteer, never heard back. And, I think there's a lot of situations like that where there's not a lot of follow-up, or HR reached out to them and they didn't, fill out one piece. So if there can be a way that we can look at 1 and 2 as a way to specifically say, how can we expedite that part of the process, I think that would be more helpful than just saying we need more people, because we do need more people, but we also need more people to actually get through the process.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for that. I'm raising my hand just because I'm adding myself to the queue. I actually went through the volunteer process for my current job. And I will say that it definitely was not efficient. And it did take me a while, and I was a little unsure as to what the requirements of me were for the volunteering, or what needed to be done. So I do think that the process could be possibly updated. I agree with that, Mike. or maybe more, going back to Dr. Hicks's point earlier, just like the consistent, like transparency and ensuring that folks know like what the process is and what needs to be checked off. And I don't know if that's an HR or where that would necessarily lie. But I also, sorry guys, my dog. That's also a part that I was looking to as well. And then just another one is just an equity piece about some schools have like, they have lots of volunteers that go into the building, or lots of volunteers who want to volunteer. And then some other schools don't necessarily have, I guess, the pool of volunteers that others do. So looking at like how we can ensure that it's kind of evenly placed somehow. I'm not exactly sure, but that's just my 2 cents. But I'll defer now to Lavinia.
So I just kind of had a clarifying question to those that are more familiar with the volunteering process. Do you mean, I mean, is it wanted to like kind of reimagine the system of kind of like get kind of accepting volunteers and like that process, or is that kind of like out of our scope? And if people just want to make it more efficient and more prioritize the volunteering process so it's like quicker. I don't know if that made sense, but if anyone, okay.
What I do know from my this experience, the biggest, and this was also pre-COVID, the longest part of the volunteer process really is the background check. And so I don't know how we do that differently or quicker or whatever, but that's in a lot of cases, that's the hang up. Even when we didn't have it on computer and it was pencil and just paper and all you had to do was fill out the thing, the application, it was still, took a while sometimes to get them back. And we also, when we talk about safety and security, we want to make sure all volunteers need to have a level of background check as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hicks. But
and while my hand is, I was going to say, and while my hand was up, I was just going to say 1 and bullet point number, and 2, the first bullet point, they're kind of like the same. There's something else under there. So I just wanted to say that, like.
Thank you. So like separating the two as they're somewhat different.
Right.
Rebecca?
Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I think, the staffing shortage is not going away, right? We're not seeing teachers coming to this field. We're not seeing a number of folks that we need coming to this field. So I think we do really have to reimagine and really rethink how we are going to fill some of these gaps. And I guess I'm thinking old school, the PTOs, the grandpas and the grandmas that come and do reading in the hallways for our kids who need, another scoop of literacy or math. I think this is doable. I really think this is doable. And I just, I guess that's my response. The shortage is not going away. Teachers need help. Student support staff need to be doing what they're paid to do instead of lunch duty and recess, and so it really reaches out at many of this aspects of the safety and wellness committee. Many components of this can be, I believe, addressed through this issue of streamlining yet securing the safety. And and I think I keep on thinking about like community schools. How is it that the 5 or whatever community schools that we're having partnerships and people moving through there fluidly, and why aren't we, or why can't we do that fluidly at all of our schools or many of the schools? So that's my comment.
Yes, thank you. Definitely expanding the scope of what volunteers can do. Dr. Hicks?
Boy, am I talking a lot today. I just wanted to follow up with what Dr. Ramirez was saying. So even in community schools, the people that are engaged in that process regularly have background checks. Those who have like one and dones don't have that. So that's why, and it's so it looks like it looks different or feels different. They've been here for a while, so it goes faster. I don't know. It also depends on who it is, and keep checking and pushing it through. So what I'm saying is that they still have the same requirements as everybody else. And I don't know what to tell you why it feels differently.
Thank you, Dr. Hicks, and Dr. Ramirez. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just as a suggestion, just because I want to make sure this doesn't come off as just throwing HR under the bus, because I know they're understaffed and overstretched, like every other aspect of this system. So I'm wondering if it could even just be a simple thing as, looking into getting a group of volunteers to help the volunteers, and just walk them through the process, follow up with them. Because, if you're, I don't know how HR does their piece. I just know there's not enough folks to do it. And that's, I don't know if it's fair to just like point a finger at them and say, work harder. But I do think like if we can figure out ways, if this panel or if this group can figure out ways that we can recommend people to help volunteers, people applying along the way, that's a way we can get more and more people in. There are also instances where, sometimes things could be streamlined, where it's like someone who just retired and they want to come back, and maybe the hang up is showing their license, or they just did a background check a couple of years ago. Could that be updated? Those sort of things. But I think, just doing it in a humane way, because I don't want this to be another just kind of blame game sort of thing. But if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about ways we can make it faster if possible.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for definitely mentioning the limitations that we have right now in the whole system. Andre, and then Dr. Hicks.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of in my mind, these kind of between the 5 fall kind of into 3 kind of categories. I mean, it seems like there's some support around utilizing volunteers in some way and improving the process to get those people to offset other staff to give them time to do the regular jobs that they're hired for. That's in part of one, that's in one and part of the first part of number 2. So kind of whatever version of that'd be something I'd propose to go forward. That might need to be tweaked on that. And that would seem like this advisory group of then the how would be something at that next level of what that looks like from a systematic standpoint, recruitment standpoint, all those next pieces. The volunteers for the volunteers. I like that. And then there seems to be, kind of a training component, the second part of number 2 with the recommendations that came out of the ad hoc committee were transitioning away, that had talked about increased staff training, as well as number 5 that had talked about increased staff training. And then this other one that may be a more complicated mess of what that is of, yeah, we always need more staff, but both 4 and 3 are speaking to additional staff, people, both psychologists, guidance counselors, and then, others as identified in 4. So I don't know if there's some mechanism maybe to move forward, combined, some of those to move forward for consideration, but it seems like some of them are overlapping there, and it seems some consensus is elevating around, the freeing up people to do the jobs that they need to do, and maybe then maybe you don't need as many or of the more staff if they actually have the time to do, the specific job functions, if volunteers or others can pick up some of those other duties.
Thank you, Andre, for that. It sounds like what you're saying then is that, I mean, we can definitely, again, we don't have to do 1, 2, and 3. We could just move forward with the recommendations as set forth in general staffing, if we would like to. And I took just some notes about the breakdown that you mentioned. So when recommending it to the board, we can definitely mention that as well, why they're all 5 there. Dr. Hicks?
I have 2 things. One, while there is a centralized system for volunteers, you can also do that process, and there's somebody at the schools that can also work with them to do that. So just want to put that out there. The other thing around the different areas of the psychologists, nurses, social workers, while there is already a plan, there was a previous plan to increase, and I'm at the middle school level specifically, I'm thinking about for counselors and social workers to get them at a certain level. And so that, I think, if I'm remembering, we might be getting more closer to the capacity, or where we said that they were going to be going this year with this next allocation and budgeting cycle. And while we need counselors, nurses, social workers, and psychologists, going back to what Michael Jones said previously, yes, and they're not out there and they're not coming. And so what other things can we think about that can still meet those needs and not necessarily be identified as that? So I'm thinking about expanding, creative, how can we still get those needs met and not necessarily those people to do those services, provide those services? So.
Yeah, so I think, Dr. Ramirez also mentioned that too, about expanding the scope of what our volunteers can do, and possibly working more intentionally with some of our partners as well to also fill in for those parts. I think all these professions, and as we've seen through the pandemic, it's just been hard getting folks in. So at all levels and everywhere. So, but going back to what Andre mentioned about possibly seeing it as 3 different recommendations, although including all of them in kind of 3 buckets. So I'm hearing mostly we've talked about group 1 and 2, but definitely they all kind of fit together. It's just more people in the building who can, ensure that our young people and our students and staff feel supported. How do folks feel about just possibly moving forward with all 5? I know we didn't discuss much about 3, 4, and 5 in the second part of number 2. But I do think that they somewhat fit together. Ruben?
Yeah, I appreciate that Audrey pointed out that they're kind of buckets. I feel comfortable putting forward something that says investigating improvements on the volunteer onboarding process towards the goal of increasing volunteers in the schools. because I feel like there's consensus on that, like we talked about. And the other ones I feel like are about spending dollars, and so I feel less comfortable as an outsider, just saying, yeah, hire more people, because like you said, that's going to be, there's difficulties there. So I don't have a suggestion there, but all I have is that putting 1 and 2 together towards the goal of more volunteership, or part 1 of number 2 as well, is what I would suggest.
Well, and as Dr. Hicks said, the hiring of the more counselors and psychologists is already, I thought there was already a stated plan so that the national ratio to student to psychologist, student to nurse, student to counselor ratios were more in alignment of the national level. So I believe that's in process.
Yeah, and I think from a budgetary standpoint, we approved through ESSER some of the monies to be able to start that. So, Dr. Hicks, is your hand still raised? Okay, I didn't want to miss you. Lavinia, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask the committee and kind of clarify, since we didn't really talk about 5 or the second part of number 2. Since it does talk about training and we also have another topic for training, I'm wondering if it would make more sense to move it under training, or it's more related to general staffing. And if the people who wrote those recommendations want to say anything, or just like the rest of the committee.
Go ahead, Lavinia, you can do the.
Okay, Dr. Hicks, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think somewhere on mine, I put in something about the NVCI training, and I agree with that is important, and that needs to expand across more staff. Maybe different levels of training, but they all need to be trained on some level. And I do agree, who just said that, putting that under training, because that's training and not necessarily staffing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I apologize for raising my hand, but I think I might have been one of the people that put something similar in one of these groups. So I would also agree to move it to training. But I would also hope that we adopt that once we get to the training part.
So there is a, not to kind of derail the conversation at all, but there is a part of the training recommendation that someone recommended that we move forward with. I recommend that NVCI become an annual part of Welcome Back Day training and be repeated annually by all staff, especially on how to de-escalate verbally. So that piece is specifically already in training. But yeah, we can definitely move it if you guys want. Andre?
I was gonna say, kind of based on what I'm just hearing, it seems as if the ratio of students to the guidance counselors and other professions is something that's already being addressed. It sounds like it was agreement on the training portions moving back for consideration under training, which then I think maybe leaves us one area of those volunteers, and however the 1-2, whichever one would be adopted, or a different language of that, and maybe that's the only one that potentially proceeds forward in this one at this time under that area.
If that was a motion, I would second it.
I didn't structure it quite that well, but that's kind of my thought of. I think maybe it sounds like we're heading towards having that as something that could be a motion and proceed forward. But I'm not sure which version. I would be personally fine with either 1 or the first part of 2. 1 seems maybe a little more inclusive to me. But I also did like part of Ruben, what you were saying, and some others of really also the process. I think those are some of the other pieces, not just that we need more, but maybe some things around that process piece of examining that, those pieces as well.
So what I hear is 1, the first bullet of 2, and then the rest of them, 3, 4, and 5, with the language of investigating and improvement of the process, with the goal of increasing more volunteers around these areas. And then moving bullet 2 of 2 to training is what I hear folks thinking. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, for me, I think 2 is almost gathered in 1. Like 1 goes a little more broad than 2, but 2 is saying some of the same things that are in 1. And then, yeah, pulling those other pieces out, the second bullet of 2, 3, and 4 seem to be being addressed through that other plan, that's, raising that up to the national. And then 5 would go back into consideration in the training section. And so really we're looking at just some bullet around volunteers and that process and so forth to offset some of those duties that currently are being done by other staff that would also free up some more time for staff to do those things.
Okay. Thank you, Andre. Mike?
I would just gently push back on trying to remove 4 or 3, 4, and 5, just in with respect with what Dr. Hicks was saying in terms of there is a plan, but even pre-pandemic, we were experiencing lots of cuts to mental health supports. At West, when I started 1 year, we had 3 psychologists, and then it was cut down to 2. So like that still is and then if we're talking social workers, a school like West is still about 9 social workers short of where it should be, based off the population and national thing. So like, while and they don't just grow on trees, and Dr. Hicks is absolutely right, like just because we put it down doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I want to make sure that I think it's out of respect for also the voices of people. What I hear a lot of people say is like, we need this. So if we all of a sudden cut it away and just assume it's going to get better, I just worry that if we don't put it out there, if we're not constantly looking at it and thinking about it and having the panel look at it and think about it, then I just don't want it to just kind of be wished away.
Thank you, Mike. So what I hear you saying, just to clarify, is that keeping those parts in there as a kind of an oversight mechanism. So when the panel is reviewing these things, they're just still addressing and making sure that those things are happening. Okay. I saw your head shake. Andre?
Yeah, and I was going to say, and I agree of keeping that in there. I guess my thing of removing it is if there's already this plan that exists that highlights what those ratios, aspirational goals for that, maybe it's referencing, to continue to strive towards those goals, having a concrete thing versus just we need more, and maybe referencing back that one and pulling that in as this other panel would continue to push forward. I'm not sure what that one is called, the support staff ratio plan, or whatever that is there, but saying we recommend continuing to move on that, or some language that keeps that at the forefront, but is a little more specific than need more.
And keep in mind that under student mental health and staff mental health, both of those issues are brought up again, so that the student support staff, which includes all like 3 or 4 of those, you know, counselor, psychologist, whatever, are a part of what are some of the recommendations for the student mental health and the staff mental health, that those are crucial elements. So they won't be lost, but I don't know.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ramirez. My thinking is that, I mean, there will be definitely some overlaps, right? In different categories. I don't think necessarily any category is going to have very unique, per se, recommendations that don't necessarily affect the other categories, or might not be part of it. So I think what I'm hearing some folks saying, keeping the number 1 as is, not necessarily utilizing number 2, first bullet point, taking second bullet point of number 2 and number 5, moving that into the training category, and then moving forward with 3 and 4 as more of an oversight kind of recommendation. Just from me is summing up what everyone has said in our lengthy conversation. I do want to remind everyone we are at 7:30. And I want to make sure that we get this one done. So there's a couple options. We can do it as I just mentioned, based off of our conversation, or we could recommend really all of them, because some of them do show up in other places. So it's, which do you guys prefer? What I said the first time of moving some of the pieces, or just recommending all 5 with the intention of investigating and improving, because I like that language, Ruben. Dr. Hicks?
So in looking at number 2 again, that the second bullet point, that the example that they gave was the NVCI training, right? But that was really about what we also talked about in here, that there is already a plan, revisiting that plan to make sure that we're following through. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, following through with even the previous ad hoc's recommendation and making sure that those things are still continuously going on. I mean, there's some merit to that as well. Thank you. Lavinia, go ahead.
I have a really quick question. I mean, based on what people have been saying, I'm thinking that we might have to change the language of some of these, especially like 3 and 4, and kind of just like directing it towards kind of like oversight in the student or in the panel. So I'm wondering if we can kind of like, we'd be able to like reword some things.
Can you say that? I'm not quite following what you're asking, how to, and I guess I'm just cautioning you about, like, the panel knows what they're supposed to do. What are we supposed to do right now? So to be careful about not mixing those 2 roles right now. So help me understand what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying if we need to reword some of the stuff, to not say add more counselors and nurses and social workers and that kind of stuff, to reword it to what like people have been like talking about. And I'm just wondering if we should be rewording it or just like submit it as it is. Is that?
Yeah, so what I hear you saying, Lavinia, is, and we could make a motion that way of allowing us to, you and I, to craft what the language is based off of the general staffing, based off of our conversations, merging some of these, into a more of a concise, like, this is what we want to say. And we could definitely get the language to everyone if they wanted to say, like, yeah, this looks good and this represents what we want to say. I'm okay with that, but it's up to the body. I think that's what you're trying to say, is like,
Yes. Yeah.
language instead of as is, based off of the recommendations, because our conversations have been in a different place than some of the recommendations that are here.
Yeah.
I see. Andre, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'd be fine with that, and then bringing that back and then resolving this one and voting on the updated things at the next meeting.
Barb, I know you were about to say something.
Yeah, that's great. I was just gonna say we could probably do that, not just for this one, but we could propose motions for the rest of the categories too. Just for the committee to consider. We do that for the board. And then they decide about whether that motion encompasses what they need. But we can definitely try to craft something in the way of motions for things that overlap and things that we know we're coming up against here over and over. So we can do that for the next meeting.
Okay, but for the sake of this one, I guess I move to allow co-chairs to draft language around the recommendations for general staffing of 6.1 of the attachment in board docs. Sorry, I'm fading, guys, too.
Second.
Okay, so Ruben seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Looks like everyone, Rebecca or Dr. Ramirez, you.
Sorry, I'm trying to get supper going here.
Oh, got you. Okay. So we are, it's a unanimous vote on that. So yes, Lavinia and I will come back together and craft some language around this one and get it to folks as soon as possible, but definitely ready before the next meeting where we will discuss the other parts and then we can vote on if that language is sufficient or not. I know that we wanted to utilize the time to finish this last one, which means that we are now concluded on that part. And Barb, do I need to make a motion to table the other category items until our next meeting?
No.
Okay, awesome.
Still out there.
Okay, so there is a consensus amongst us that we do want to meet next Thursday at the same time, correct? Thumbs up. Okay.
Okay.
So go ahead, Barb.
Nothing. I'm just confirming. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, everyone wants to do that. And so next steps will be us meeting next week to discuss the remaining items of our recommendations. And then, as I mentioned in 7.1, co-chairs will report to the Board of Education at the Operations Work Group meeting March 13, 2023. Item 8.1. Yeah, I motion for a meeting to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Andre. All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good weekend.
Good
Stay
night.
warm.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you. Okay.
One moment.